Welcome to another episode of NBM Talks, a series of the Narrative-Based Medicine Lab, where we speak with individuals who are working at the intersection of literature, medicine, and health. Our guests are writers, clinicians, scholars, artists, and advocates who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the field. Together we discuss how we can engage with narrative-based medicine principles and practices in creative and diverse ways. We hope you enjoy this episode.
So today we have here Dr. Mireille Norris, who is with us here at the Temerity Faculty of Medicine. And would you like to start off just giving us an introduction about who you are and your role here at the University of Toronto?
Sure. So I'm the Black Health Team Lead for Temerity Medicine. I'm following in the footsteps of Dr. Mireille Norris, who is the inaugural faculty lead for the Black Health Team Lead at Temerity. And I've been in Toronto since 1996, coming here after completing core internal medicine to do a subspecialty in geriatric medicine. So I'm also staff at Sunnybrook, geriatrician, and since 2020 also the Department of Medicine faculty lead for Black and Indigenous medical learner. And in that capacity, I've been tasked to help recruit, mentor Black and Indigenous medical students to apply to core internal medicine.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Norris. Would you prefer for this interview, how would you like to be referred to?
You can call me Dr. Mimi.
Dr. Mimi. Okay, great. So just to set the context, I'm Sarah Kim. I'm the Temerity Faculty of Medicine, Medical Education, Health Humanities Theme Lead. And I've invited Dr. Mimi here just so we could have a conversation now that Black History Month has passed for this year, 2024, and really wanting to have more of a, candid discussion. This is what the humanities are about, of really inviting critical thinking, perhaps some disagreement, but really opening the discussion up to what some of the things that you'll be carrying forward after, now that February is finished, and thinking about where we go from here with Black history.
Thank you. So this Black history was maybe a little more emotional for me. I think that since taking on the role of the Black Health Team Lead, on top of my other role with the department, I've been a lot more intentional in engaging in activities during Black History Month. I've seen a play called L'amour tel une cathédrale ensevelie. And, for people who don't speak French, this title is really associated with, it happens in Haiti. It reflects the experience of both people from Haiti. And during the earthquake, the cathedral in Haiti just crumpled. And in this theater play, which was a collaboration between Crow's Theater, English theater, and the Théâtre Français de Toronto francophone, there were French subtitle. This was very moving. There were images in the background that were from a documentary of that came from something called Fire at Sea, where you witness both people as they arrive close to the destination. Fire sets to their boat and you see them drown. This is the background of the story where you're seeing the emotional expression of a mother who's lost her child, who attempted to reach from Haiti to Canada, and he could not come to Canada because of being 30 years old. Bureaucracy got in the way of him rejoining his mother through normal pathways, and so he takes the boat to reach America. And you learn in the play that he dies at sea, but you are moved by the emotional experience of the mother who cries for the loss of her son, and the images of this documentary where you see how people who are trying to escape suffering die. And this was very triggering for me.
Mm-hmm. Can you say a bit more about some of the reflections that came up for you as you mentioned at the start of this month, we had another discussion where you were celebrating the richness of Black history through a lot of the arts and culture. And so as you've spoken about your experience watching this play, what is it that is sitting with you that gives you thoughts about what you want to carry forward beyond Black History Month?
Thank you. So I saw this play with my fiance, who's a proud Black man from Trinidad, and my son, and who has visited Haiti. And while I was moved by the artistry and I could hear the music that was expressed in Creole, both my son and my fiance were very emotionally stirred in a negative way. Feeling that the play showed some negative image that are shown in the media about suffering and death and escaping a beautiful country because of oppression and poverty. So it really struck to me on the experience of Black men in America, the violence that is felt by Black men, how anti-Black racism is particularly deadly and threatening to Black men. And this was, again, reminded to me through a spoken word artist, Dwayne Morgan, who's a Black man from Scarborough, who described his experience of becoming a spoken word artist. And he is internationally renowned. He was invited by Obama. And in one of his spoken word poetry, he describes how he was so grateful to be the father of a Black girl. Mm-hmm. And how that brought the awareness how he would father a Black girl to make her feel empowered, make her recognize the threat of patriarchy and have the courage to speak up. And it was quite moving, that reflection of both this poetry as well as the play. So I also been reading the book All About Love by Bell Hooks. And what struck me about this book was talking about love as a spiritual pursuit, as a verb, the action of loving through action, and how love can really transcend a lot of suffering. And this then ties into the movie that I saw during Black History Month, One Love, that portrays a period within the life of Bob Marley, portrayed by the actor Kingsley, and the relationship with Rita Marley, and how Bob Marley had a message of love, and how his life was threatened as he acted to try to bring a message of unity. And in Jamaica, when there were really a civil war that involved political party that were, having different view, and it was really brought a lot of reflection. Also, the message of Bob Marley, who was diagnosed late with melanoma and was dying, and talked about how his life didn't matter. It was really the people, and talking about how reggae is the voice of the people. And, he died, I believe, in 1981, if I'm correct. But he made sure that he visited Africa before his death and had a concert in Africa. And if my memory is correct again, the African country that he visited did not free itself from colonialism until 1980. So I found that these various art experience that I really focused on during Black History Month brought a deeper reflection around love, around the experience of anti-Black racism as it pertained to Black men, and really elevate ourselves and try to turn towards the positive, to the humanities.
Yeah, you've described a lot of different experiences through the arts this month, which sound like you've heard a lot of different stories, and that perhaps these were different mediums through which people could express their voice. I'm wanting to circle back where you mentioned that when watching the play, that your son and husband had some negative reaction. And I'm curious for you to speak about that more, about that experience of racism that they've had and the stereotypes that they feel they may have been subjected to around, the Black identity and violence. I'm wondering if you can speak a bit more about that, of what kind of thoughts came up for you as they expressed their experience of that play and what it brought up for them.
Yes, thank you. I actually stayed after the play and heard the artist express why he wanted to show it in that way. So he's a Black man, and his mother and him lost their son and brother. So he wanted to depict the pain of his mother. However, my fiance and my son both have been, my son has been targeted by police. He's been profiled by police. He's been labeled as resisting arrest during the COVID pandemic when he was profiled and he was minding his business, doing nothing wrong, and really feeling frightened. He was tased and admitted to a hospital on a Form 1 when there was no psychiatric diagnosis. And I was called by police saying that my son had been admitted. So my son experienced that despite being light-skinned and not necessarily, showing much African ancestry. My partner described himself as a proud Black man. And after this play, we had, kind of a sensitive conversation where he reminded me to not only see him as a man who happens to be Black, but as a Black man. And he reminded me that, in my neighborhood, which is predominantly white, he has had to be very careful as he stands out, and he's tall, 6'1", and he has observed behaviors when we went out together to enjoy dancing where women pulled their purse next to him as if he could potentially harm them. Or we've had situations where he reached my home before me. We're traveling in 2 cars, and for fear that neighbors might alert police, wondering what he's doing in the car waiting for me, he intentionally waited in the parking lot of the hospital in the public area so as to not alert suspicion and calling for police. So, and he's a professional who works in healthcare. And he navigated his life avoiding those situations. But now that we live together and I live in this neighborhood, he brought to my attention how he never experienced as much anti-Black racism as he has since being in my life.
So he's experienced more racism as a Black man since entering. I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
whereas for me, as I have now been more intentional of working in an environment where I serve the Black community at the South Francophone, where half of the population is Afro-Caribbean, doing some consultation at Bendel Acres, where 95% of the staff is Afro-Caribbean, I've never received so much love. So this was a real light bulb moment for me to realize how I had developed a thick skin towards some of the slights that I experienced all my life. And I had developed blinders and folders and become a little deaf and let things pass over my head. So this play was quite stirring, and it brought this conversation and this awareness, on how it was different for him now that he's exposing himself more. And while I'm actually now experiencing a wellness and a welcoming that I never experienced, now that I'm actually going the other direction.
Yeah.
So quite stirring.
And it sounds like these experiences through, having these critical discussions after watching different works of art or poetry, the movie. It sounds like you have some really rich discussions with your partner whose experience has been so different as a Black man,
Yes.
who is darker skin
Yes.
than your experience as a Black woman with lighter skin. And you've also described that of your son, who also sounds like he is of lighter skin. I'm curious to know, with respect to Black history, Black health, and cultural diversity, it's you yourself obviously are someone who engages with the arts, but do you see the role that it can play for moving us forward? As we reflect on Black history, what do you see as us moving forward, and the role that the arts and humanities can play in a future that you would like to see?
Thank you for that. The arts trigger emotion. So, seeing images of both people dying at sea in the background of a play where you see the pain of the mother who has lost the son expressed with passion, and there's a choir of singers who are singing in Creole about the loss of a life, is so stirring. Similarly, the beauty of the movie One Love, the power of love, and affirmation of love, and commitment to love. So I'm a dementia expert, and there's something about emotions. The amygdala is the part of the brain that is really linked to emotion. We talk about the old brain, and this part of the brain has a lot of connection with the cortex. So we know that memory can be more encoded when there are emotions associated. So I think humanities can really help bring more understanding of the Black experience, more recognition of the importance of Black health for the purpose of improving health outcomes. So when we're talking about centering the Black health curriculum, when we're talking about the importance of mentoring Black medical students and Black residents who are experiencing racism as they're navigating their learning experience, I think humanities can help humanize, those experiences of racism and help people really grasp the impact of this on the person, But if we need to transcend and move past those painful experience of racism, but also for those who do not experience racism and for whom they've grown to let it pass a bit over their head, as I have, right? As someone who was always in white spaces, someone who benefited from privilege and affluence and colorism, you know, appreciate that the experience of racism is different for people who are dark-skinned. It is different for men. It's tremendously harmful. And if we do not address the disparate health outcome of racialized and Black people, we all suffer because we work in a public health system where the resources for healthcare are finite. And therefore, if a group is disproportionately negatively affected, has a higher negative health burden, and this health burden comes at a higher cost, then the whole society is negatively impacted. So sometimes people have difficulty connecting the dot between the need to address anti-Black racism and the impact on the health outcome, not only of Black and racialized people, but of our whole society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you brought up how the health impacts on one group is never an isolated event, that we are all interconnected. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up. It's interesting that you spoke a lot about this opening that the arts gives. As you mentioned, the work of Bob Marley, where a lot of his music to me was centered around opening of the heart, which is, in a sense, the way I see the arts, that the arts are a means of questioning, but it's also a portal to connect hearts. And I've always seen the humanities as a way to provide a framework for being able to consider other perspectives, and also to challenge what may be a dominant perspective. And you spoke so beautifully about that as you've engaged with your partner and began to reconnect with the Black community, seeing what perspective that you thought was the one way to exist was something that actually was only a way, and that it may not have actually been speaking and resonating with who you are as a person. So I'm
Totally.
curious if you want to speak more about that.
Thank you. I think that because I arrived here at the age of 2, because my father really passes for white, and I grew up in white neighborhood, I went to school where often I was the only Black person. Unconsciously, I really adopted ways of behaving, ways of talking, values that are more aligned with the predominant white culture. Something you might not know about me, I did the Miss Black Quebec beauty pageant before the internet is available. So if you Google me, Quebec Black beauty pageant, you will not find me. It was 1982. But I came third runner-up. But I was told, you're not a real Black person. So that struck me, in terms of having adopted views and ways of seeing the arts more, not really as someone who embodies the Black experience, because I always was socialized in white environment. So during this Black History Month, I was reminded that some of the way I viewed some of the offering as display was more from the lens of someone who may not actually feel the pain of anti-Black racism. It was very humbling. It was also triggering. And it brought kind of a light bulb moment in my mind to realize, oh, look at how now, I am recognizing all of the acknowledgement and validation from the Black community, that's my community, that recognizes me, whereas as someone who always experienced my professional life, my education in white environment, I developed a real kind of tough skin, a kind of numbing of some of the racist experience that I had throughout my career. I learned to just, as I think it's LeBron James who said, shut up and dribble. So I became very skilled at the art of shutting up. And now that I'm in a position of leadership where I'm trusted by medical student and resident to speak up and advocate for them, but also Black patients to advocate for them, speak up for them, I'm finding my real authentic self, and I'm healing from trauma, and I'm grateful for the trust that Trinity Medicine has given me in putting me in this leadership position, the Department of Medicine that has funded my training with the NEA, the New Emerging Academic Leader Program, where I'm learning skills on how to speak up, not only for myself, but for the community and for the learners. So I'm on a journey of healing, a journey of awareness. I was quite struck by how this play brought this awareness in me on how I had navigated life so far. And I'm reminded, to be more sensitive, aware, anticipate how, the Black men in my life, are likely to be perceived in a different way. It even led to a conversation, not only with my partner, with some of my colleagues, about the fact that I might have to move because the environment that I live could potentially be harmful, if not deadly, for my partner. And I never had that awareness before. And it was stirred by this play.
I'm really glad you did also bring up that quote that was said to LeBron James by, one of the NBA. I don't remember if it was an NBA official where he was literally told, just shut up and dribble. And it really speaks to, through the experience of someone who is the oppressed or deemed to have less power, how people adapt their behaviors to try and survive. Now, I think what's really admirable about LeBron James is that he chose to use his voice to actually speak out, and has been actually a wonderful role model and generous individual in terms of, I think, raising up the Black population and people, and being a really model representative of someone who's worked very hard and then used his success to benefit the community. Hearing about your experience where now you're on a different journey where your eyes have been opened, the blinders have been taken off. It's very similar to the Asian experience. I remember there was this, it still exists, is that some people would refer to you as a banana or a Twinkie because you were yellow on the outside but white on the inside, when to refer to those who had assimilated their behaviors in order to fit in to white society. And really been thinking about that in terms of right now, as we are in a time where we are looking more around the idea of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and what does that mean for cultural diversity, and defining cultural diversity, and how do we move forward together. And listening to you speaking about, a variety of different Black experiences, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around that, of the Black experience within this framework of trying to move towards celebrating and really leveling out the idea of cultural diversity and equity and inclusion. What thoughts come up for you?
Oh my God, this is so important, right? Race is a social construct, and as someone who was born in Haiti, my 23andMe analysis shows that I have this diversity from West Africa, heritage of the transatlantic slave trade, as well as European ancestry, tracing back to France, Spain, England, as well as Middle Eastern ancestry. So, the challenge that we have when we label someone as Black is the threat of seeing the group as monolithic, whereas the experience of Canadian Black people, some of whom are trace their ancestry back to slaves who left America. Some come from the Caribbean. More recently, there's a whole diaspora from Africa. So there's tremendous diversity within the Black community. With the experience of slavery, you have links back to France, England, Spain, even the Dutch Caribbean. Within Africa, you have the complexity of North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Africa, again, the various influence of German, English, French, colonialism, as well as the religious, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, influence. So the Black diaspora is extremely diverse, and we actually trace genetic ancestry as the most diverse in Africa, and those genes have spread throughout the world. So while there is tremendous diversity within the Black community, there's diversity in humanity, and it enriches our perspective as human beings, but also as healthcare providers, to be mindful of this diversity and not fall into the trap of seeing the Black experience as one. Actually, I've been doing some work on mentoring of Black learners with the help of Chila Kalasai, who is a cultural anthropologist and education scientist. And in our semi-structured interview, we hear some of the Black students who grew up in Africa describe how they never saw themselves as Black until they came to Canada. They identified to their tribe, or they identified to their religion as Muslim. And it's when they came to Canada that they realized that, this label had been tagged onto them that, you're now seen as Black, and that they had to now understand what that meant for them in the Canadian context. So yes, diversity has a potential of really enriching our experience. I'm a geriatrician, I'm all about complexity. I love complexity, but sometimes, in our world, for expediency, heuristic, we like to just kind of put people under one, label. you're Black. And I think this reductionism can lead to a lot of misunderstanding and conflict.
Yeah, and you've brought up a very, difficult part of our medical history where we have to really reflect on who defined these categories, who set these different, what were once originally about the reducing for categorization, but it became embedded with, or it is embedded with, a valuing of who is valued more historically, and how
Thank
we, how we're sitting in this time of trying to understand how we dismantle and really come to terms with a lot of these value systems we've internalized around race. So I'm really glad to hear you, mentioning of, what is it? And that's what I'm curious to know with you, if you have any thoughts. How do we move forward as we try to dismantle these historical negative structures around hierarchy of races that were embedded into our reductionistic system? And do you have thoughts about how we, again, what is the future of, or how do you see the future unfolding as we work, as you do the work that you do and I do the work that I do? I would love to know, what comes up as I just drop that for you.
Thank you. Well, since this is a talk about, humanities, I'd like to refer to the book written by Eric Williams, one of the first, I think, president of Trinidad, who was an economist. The book is about capitalism and slavery. So, when we see that race is a social construct, there were reasons why the system was useful up to a point. And then once it became costly, it got abandoned. It was not that people had a eureka moment that, we've got to do good. It was no longer beneficial economically. And this book really brings home that message. Right now, we have an aging society in Canada, Europe, America. And I'm a geriatrician. I love older people. But this aging society has economic impact in terms of our productivity. And as our country needs to thrive, now the economic imperative has changed. In Africa and in Haiti, Caribbean, and in some of those countries, 50% of the population is less than 25. And now Africa, as well as Asia, are becoming economic engine. And I'm referring Globe and Mail article, where they're particularly recognizing Africa and Southeast Asia, where the growing young population will be an economic engine. So if we understand that race was a social construct that was used for capitalist gain by European countries that were empowered by the church, 1492, the papal bull that made anyone who was not European less than human. But now the tables are changing with the demographic reality that we are experiencing in Europe and North America. It's very important that we understand how the future is moving. And if I need to use the language of one of the speakers at the Black Physician Association Ontario on dermatology and skin of color, the world is becoming browner. And with this shift in demographics, there'll be an economic shift. There's an imperative to recognize the fallacy of race as a social construct. It harms people on the human level, but it also has tremendous potential economic harm to us in this society if we do not understand the economic demographic shift that is happening. And this will have political implications.
As I listen to you speak, it makes me think about how one of my concerns that I would really like to see as we move forward in the future is how do we remove the social violence, in a sense, where we don't repeat the same sort of oppressive violence as we try to, make society more equitable. That's something I do struggle with being part of a diverse group of friends, where everyone, it's a very painful time, I think, in the world. There's a lot of pain. And you mentioned this actually in our earlier discussion when you had watched the movie at the start of Black History Month.
Origin.
You watched Origin, and you said a phrase where this thing of the Olympics of oppression, of whose pain matters more. It's a thorny issue where my hope is that we can actually reimagine structures that are not rooted in social violence. And I think, and it makes me think back to, again, think about Bob Marley, is how do we move forward where our hearts are connected, where, I don't know how else to phrase it, where we move forward in trusting in the love and the compassion for one another, to really reimagine structures. And I wonder if you have thoughts around that. I feel like you do.
Yes. And I'm going to start with the positive. I will say, read All About Love by Bell Hooks. And in her book, talking about how, the lack of love in our societies, the predominant violence is harmful to everyone. And, talk about how a lot of the oppressive structures are within a framework of patriarchy, capitalism, and that those structures that promote gun violence, gun ownership, domestic violence are dissociated from love. And, I'd like to say that as a proud Black woman of Caribbean origin, I want to see women empowered. I want to see the voice of women lifted up. I want to see, men speak against those oppressive structures. When I visited Haiti after the earthquake, 2016, was very interesting for me in the museum to see both men and women being credited for the success of the rebellion that made Haiti the first free Black republic. So if we can have better balance, and really, again, to use the word of Bell Hooks, right? See love as a spiritual pursuit, as an action, as a verb, and move away from those oppressive structures. This capitalist structure is one way that has been associated with winners takes all and oppression, but there are other cultures. In Africa, there's the term Ubuntu. My humanity sees the humanity in you. I am because you are, and and I plan to visit Africa, and I think we see some of the violence in Africa being fostered and fueled because of the forces that are agitating for resource. So it's also some of these oppressive capitalist structures that are behind violence. So I want to be hopeful, and I want to focus on love and our common humanity. And that's what I would say.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Those are some really lovely thoughts as we wind down this discussion. And I'm wondering, just in closing, if you have any last words or thoughts that you'd like to say on this discussion around Black health, Black history, the power of the arts and the humanities, the power of love. Is there anything else you would like to say in closing?
Well, I really believe in the power of the art to trigger those emotions that can help us have a higher level of consciousness and awareness, bring beauty, bring love, and move away from a dialogue of Olympics of oppression and recognize our common humanity and our common suffering that is part of the human experience. And hope that, in Black History Month, we are reminded of the role of Black people in our society. We want to not forget the harm done by the transatlantic slave trade and oppressive powers that are capitalist. And through the art, we be reminded of the beauty that has been brought in our society through many Black artists, Bob Marley, literature, bell hooks, music, Oscar Peterson, scientists. And Black History Month is an opportunity to reaffirm, our common humanity and our important role in our society.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mimi, for such an enlightening discussion. We have lots to, mull over and continue to reflect on as we think about Black history beyond Black History Month, and really thinking about how much Black health means the health of society as a whole, and how we really need to think about where we all fit together. And I look forward, actually, to having another discussion at some point in the future. And I'm really grateful for the time that you've given us here. So thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out many other episodes. And if you're interested in learning more about narrative-based medicine, visit us online at narrativebasedmedicine.ca for more great content and to explore our upcoming offerings.